All right, man. Welcome back for another pod, dude. Thanks for making it. Did you catch the FTX interview thing with Andrew Sorkin on the New York Times thing, whatever it's called? Did you catch any bit of that, or did you know that was happening?
I did not catch that one, but I saw a couple other little things he did. At least
Yeah.
Sam.
So the weird thing was that Andrew Sorkin is like this like anchor on MSNBC, right? Have you heard of him?
If I saw
He's
a
he's
picture,
a
probably the face would ring.
Yeah, yeah, no, he's a pretty mainstream financial journalist slash anchor. Basically, the way journalism works now, you're sort of a half celebrity, half anchor, and so he's been around for quite a long time. And I think BitBoy had said a few days ago, or maybe a week or two. Who cares what he says, right? But he was what he was alluding to did kind of make sense. He was basically getting at the idea that Andrew Sorkin was just a company man and he was just working for the banks and blah blah blah. I mean, I don't actually believe anything BitBoy says, so I don't really like care like what he says. But the interesting thing was SBF gets on this a show that's sourced or event hosted by Andrew Sorkin, and it's just so bizarre to watch, right? This guy has been accused of, credibly accused of maybe playing fast and loose at the very best with customer money, but looks very likely that he committed just outright fraud, right? Like a Bernie Madoff, like, it started off innocent and then, he was just hoping to fill a hole and then the hole kept getting bigger and then he threw more money at the hole and before you know it, it's just all hole. There's nothing but hole. Uh, and yet this guy's invited to a prestigious event and he's just interviewed like a normal person, like he hasn't committed massive fraud, right? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but man, I mean, now I'm starting to think that this mainstream media thing and all of the people lobbing accusations that the mainstream media is super biased. Again, I always resist these conspiracy theories myself, but I'm like, man, this is just the weirdest thing. Something there must be something to this, right? He must have some contacts in media and maybe government. Yeah, I mean, he's not been arrested yet, right? Why has he not been arrested, right? I mean, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I don't know. Sound like a broken record with this, but at the meetups, one thing last month especially, I've been harping on is you try to do crypto, but you still try to have the legacy financial system ground based. Don't be surprised in 6 9 months when your house comes down. For example, I believe it's the HBO documentary on the 2008 financial crash. Basically, at the end of it, they say a big reason for the political divide, the MAGA people of the world, the QAnon people of the world, is because '08 showed, or a lot of people had the conception after '08 that there's rules for the New York fat cats of the world, and then rules for the average working 9 to 5 people like us. And part of the documentary, there was about 30-minute section where basically the main bankers of Wall Street, the CEOs, had to go testify in front of Congress, and basically they kind of got ringed, slapped on the wrist a little bit, and then their punishment was they had to go in front of Barack Obama, or yeah, I believe at the time Bush, had just done his second term, so Obama came in, so he was being gifted, a financial crisis as his, first term in, or like first, 3 months as president, sitting president. And
Yeah.
basically, he went to the room, the CEOs. He said, "All right, I'm going to slap you on the wrist. We're going to force you to sign these papers. The U.S. government gets half a stake in the banks. Here's this money. You just pay us back the loan. No one goes to jail. No one gets, a spanking, this, that, and a third." And like halfway through the documentary, you're like, "What the hell you mean? There's no rules for thee, not for me." So I think it's just funny, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world and everyone else. It's like I think they're trying to pass a bill now where it's like anything over $1,000 on Cash App, the Venmos of the world, if you don't report it, that's finable and stuff. And this guy just lost, the
Yeah.
numbers range from what, like 10 to $20 billion, and like you said, he's still walking the
Yeah.
streets. So I think it goes to my point where it's one of the points of crypto is decentralized stuff, and part of decentralization is self-regulation, where I feel like if, not saying we should go to medieval times, but if something like this happened in medieval times, you just get stoned or stomped to death, where he's a 1%er with IV parents, and he's sleeping soundly every
Mm.
night. So again, not saying I want any violence to happen upon Sam, but I think it just shows how there's rules for thee, not for me. And a lot of the Congress people talk about making all these regulations in crypto and legacy finance to help the average Joe like us. But to your point, a lot of people in the Twitter sphere are like, why is this man in, Ritz Carlton's doing interviews when he's lost billions of dollars in 30 days flat?
I know it is so bizarre. It just coincidentally, I just had my phone on YouTube while I was just like playing around with the settings over here, and apparently there's a Joe Rogan was live, or like he was just making a podcast with some of his comedian friends, and the New York thing just happened to be going live, right? So they just tuned in and they started. I didn't even watch the whole episode, but even he was like, even he has been like, it's so bizarre. This guy has lost all this money and he's just a free man. It just kind of just makes no sense at all. So I mean, he's not been in jail, imprisoned or anything yet. One of the I think the lessons that has not been learned from the election of Donald Trump, right? And this is like a misunderstanding or mistake that even I made right after Trump got elected, which was, I think after Obama, the country had this sort of impression that it was post-racial, that it was sort of like, like Obama came, America has a black president, and it's also gay rights are also widely accepted. Gay marriage is, legal now. America has moved into a different kind of a liberalism. And then Donald Trump comes along, and I think the lesson that a lot of people didn't learn is a large number of Americans, more than half, are incredibly disenfranchised, and one of the things that I think Obama's sort of charisma papered over is that many people were incredibly miserable. There was a opioid epidemic going on.
Oh yeah.
Lots of people were living paycheck to paycheck still. This whole illegal immigration thing was not really, there was no solution to it at all. Immigrants were just coming, illegally, no issues. This was creating so much resentment, and most Americans thought that, they were living in a post-racial, tolerant America. And they didn't realize that there was this, very dark underbelly, not of racist, but of just economic deprivation. And the people were so desperate for just any non-establishment person that they're like, all right, we'll just go with this guy, right? Even if they like held their nose and voted for him, they're like, you know what, we just need some new non-establishment person in there, and this is the best that unfortunately the country come up with. But it's almost like those lessons are being ignored today, right? With the Sam Bankman-Fried, just like coming on and like, hey, I'm just going to give an interview like I haven't committed a massive, crime, Ponzi scheme, fraud thing. I'm just going to go ahead and start like having a normal interview like nothing is wrong. And it seems like, some of those lessons are being forgotten, and, you at some point have to pay the piper, right? And I'm wondering what the fallout and long-term consequence of something like this is going to be.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, Bernie Madoff, I think, did like whatever it was, 120, 130 years. Well, he died in prison, but he was sentenced like 120, 130. And even then, he lost whatever the heck it was, like north of 50 billion. I remember it was something crazy, whatever the whole, Ponzi scheme he had
60,
going on.
I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, compared to the last 2 years, 60 billion sounds like a cute little tip, but even, that's still a crap ton of money. That's like 20 Dallas Cowboy franchises. It's anyway, but and he did the jail time and he died in prison. But I think in the wake, of him doing that, there was like 12 suicides just internally related to like people he worked with. I believe his son committed suicide. One of his distant buddies who got his friends in Bernie's Ponzi scheme committed suicide because his friends were like 60, and then the whole thing blew up. And if anyone ever loses money, it sucks. But if you're 60 and you lose, a third or more of your net worth, you're kind of done. Where like if you're someone my age, or even if you're 35 or 40, you got enough runway where you can still recoup that. But I guess to your point, like what's learned, that's one thing. Even when we were in the bull run about this time last year, the previous May, when people were like, oh, around the corner, hyper Bitcoinization here, crypto adoption's here, and just talking with my normie friends, and it's a small sample size, but I feel like, just with my social circle, I got a good mix of people between you guys, work guys, gym buddies, this, that, and a third. And I would just same thing ask people like, oh, are you nervous that, America sold half its oil reserves? Like, A, they didn't even hear about it. And then B, they're like, what's the consequence of that? And even I'm just like, nah, we're still 10 years away from, and this was before, FTX and other stuff. So even now it's almost, if the runway is like we're still another 15, 20 years from, adoption, or just even 10 years where 1 in 2 Americans can see the utility for Bitcoin, DeFi, DeFi can actually stop being a Ponzi scheme in itself, decentralizing stuff, this, that, and a third. But it's like you said, so many Americans, you can make an argument, one of the reasons Trump became president, so many Americans are disenfranchised. They're just trying to make it day to day. Like, you got single moms working 2 or 3 jobs. Like you said, with the opioid epidemic, you got people that get off work, and when they get home, they're just making sure their dad or their uncle or their son, they got to keep an eye on him, make sure he's not shooting up again, this, that, and a third. And, they don't have an extra hour to watch, a podcast or Lynn Alden, or go read New York Times, or go watch a documentary on Bernie Madoff. So I guess my point is, like, will people learn from it? It's like, I don't even think most people have their eyes on the road, let alone what's 100 yards in front of them.
Yeah, and you can't blame them, because they're just like struggling just to make it day to day. It's just such a slog, such a struggle. If you're working your ass off, you got like 2 or 3 kids to feed, and you're worried about gas money. You just don't have the mental capacity to sit down and read up on finance or whatever. Me and you are in fortunate situations where, we have money coming in, and we're also sort of plugged into like the news, quite a bit. And so we understand, a lot of what's going on, but there's so many people that just don't have access to, I mean, they have the opportunity to, but just don't have the mental capacity to, absorb more information and sort of, figure out how to position themselves, to understand, say, something like Bitcoin or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think I bring all this up because we seem to have another recession coming, and people are already struggling. There's still so many people that are currently living paycheck to paycheck, and we're still living in a world or a country rather, where the unemployment rate is not that high. And so if it, say, doubles or triples, even if it starts going to 7-8%, I don't know, man. I mean, I think a lot, whenever recessions come around, people start killing themselves. The suicide rate goes up, because I think one of the biggest stressors is, in the modern world, you need to be earning money in order to just survive. I mean, we're not hunter-gatherers anymore, right? So, it doesn't matter if you know how to kill a deer. There's no environment in the United States where you can just live off the land. It's not legal anymore, at least not that I'm aware of, right?
I know.
So
I mean, it's state by state, but
yeah, I think a lot of hardship is coming, and it seems like there's not much that's acknowledged from our leaders, right? From not just like the media, right? With Andrew Sorkin interviewing a former billionaire, son of Democrat influencers, as if it's no big deal, and he really didn't go down hard on him at all. It's almost like it was a soft sort of, the guy committed fraud, and I mean, it should have been a very aggressive interview, and it really wasn't, and I mean, not only that, but he thanked the guy. Hey, thank you so much for coming, even though you've been advised not to come. And then like everyone starts clapping, believe it or not. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, I need to check that out later. That
sounds
like
oh,
usual.
It's so brave, so brave.
Yeah, it sounds like the usual legacy media circus dance they do. Just like it's just an hour of softball pitches.
One of the things I was thinking, as the world is becoming more and more decentralized, and these traditional institutions like, not just like the financial institutions, but media institutions, and even, I would argue like health institutions like the WHO and the CDC, that people are, starting to lose trust in these institutions that have lasted for so long. And they're looking for, not just alternatives to centralized money, but alternatives to centralized information. So you have, the rise of the Substacks, the rise of the Twitter followers, the rise of, independent bloggers, YouTubers, actually. There's a lot of people who get all of their information from a collection or a mix of all of these things, and they're not turning on the BBC or CNN or Fox News or anything, because people are just plugging off, right? I mean, I bet you more people listen to Joe Rogan than watch CNN, in this country.
Oh no, I think that's statistically backable. I think every year he has like 1 billion or 2 billion downloads. I'm pretty sure you can Google that later. But I know. I think if you put MSNBC, I think if you put CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even if you just do like 30-second hit time, I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan swallows them whole. Because same thing too, like you said, and I'm not to go down like a rabbit hole with this, but when people say they don't like Joe Rogan, I can just tell they don't watch his podcast. The reason, especially me, 90% of people I know that follow him, he will bring, like, for example, a while ago over the summer, he had the gentleman's names are escaping me, but he had a climate change expert, and then not a climate change denier, but a skeptic. And basically, the guy even said first like 5 minutes, he's like, I work for Exxon. Obviously, I have an agenda. He's like, I don't think we should be throwing, toxic tar into the ocean. But a lot of the stuff going out right now is fear mongering. And basically, Joe had both them on for 3 hours. He did, he asked them questions just to confirm stuff, if he's like for the people at home. But he gave them 3 hours unedited. You can watch A and B, and then as an independent adult, and this you can't, and also just the lack of borders, the fact that you can have a 3-hour conversation, because this, like even with crypto, trying to give someone a 5-minute TED talk on it, but you can't talk about the wall, climate change, taxes, FTX. You can't talk about that in 5 minutes, but on 3 hours unedited, you can talk about stuff like that and actually, properly unpack it. So it's, that's, to your point, that's why he's swallowing Legacy Media's lunch money, because people are like, I don't want to be told what to think. Give me the information unedited. I'll watch it a couple times, do what I need to do, and then I'll make my opinion and move on with my day,
Well, to be fair, like the information that like he puts out there is edited to the extent that it's filtered by his guests, right? So he brings out a guest who's, anti-climate change, then that person is going to have an anti-climate change perspective, and he brings a guy who says climate change is a human catastrophe, we need to do something right away. He will have that opinion. I think where he distinguishes himself from Legacy Media is he will have both come on and have a reasonable, good faith-based conversation, right? Because he's not trying on the podcast to deliberately create outrage. He's not trying to just court controversy to get more clicks. The value add on someone like Joe Rogan is that, he just wants a good, sincere conversation, right? And that's not what Legacy Media wants. Legacy Media just wants to piss you off, because they learned that if they piss you off a lot, you will probably keep watching. And engagement is dictated by how angry.
I would say not probably, you will. I'm pretty sure the social media algorithms, one of the big things is if you voted for Joe Biden, for example, you're going to see a lot of Trump stuff in your feed, because they know you're going to be like, all these stupid MAGA idiots, and then you're going to leave a comment. So it's like, even the social media knows, it's like, if you like all these Biden pages, they're going to feed you some Trump rhetoric stuff, because they know you're going to get pissed. You're going to go in the comment section, spend 30 minutes arguing with some idiots, and that gets screen time, ad revenue, this, that, and a third.
Yeah. And I kind of like view YouTube as a little bit different from social media, right? Because you don't really engage with the creator that much. I mean, sure, you can leave comments, right? But the comment section of YouTube is not really a place where I think a lot of like long form conversations, influencers don't hang out there, right? Elon Musk is not commenting on the comment section of YouTube, for example, right? And neither are like leading opinion makers or opinion or thought leaders commenting on that page. I barely ever comment or read the comments at all. I'm there for the video. So I've always put like YouTube in a slightly different category, because it's basically, this is just long form. It could be long form. I mean, it does really well with long form. And you choose who you want to listen to. You could listen to Alex Jones if you wanted to. You could listen to Lex Friedman. You could listen to Sean Carroll, who does a really good science podcast. Anyone you want, and then not have the information fed to you like you're some sort of like robot, just sort of an automaton that's just supposed to be a good citizen. You can explore a world of ideas and figure out, who's full of bullshit and who's not full of bullshit, right? And because you have so many options available to you, I think your most people's sense of, I think this is bullshit is fairly good. I think there's going to be people who are duped by con men and who are duped by smooth talkers, but I think for the most part, people have a good ear for bullshit, and they can sense insincerity when they hear it, right? Which is why I think people like Lex Friedman. Lex is one of my favorite podcasters right now, right? Because Lex. I think, and he does all these topics, but you could even argue that he's not a very dynamic or charismatic person, right? He's very soft spoken and he's kind of flat.
Yeah, he's pretty flat, yeah.
Makes jokes about him being a robot, but I think the reason that he's been so successful, not just because he's intelligent and he asks great questions, I think more important than that, because there's lots of smart people, a lot of them are scammers. I think the reason that he's been so successful is that I don't think anybody who watches his podcast or has watched his podcast for a long time doubts his sincerity, that he's a sincere person. He's not trying to just court controversy. He wants to get to the truth of the matter. and that is lacking in mainstream media. Which mainstream media personality can you watch? And I'm like, I'm going to watch this guy because I think his heart is in the right place, and what he is really interested in is the truth. That's, I mean, can you imagine you thinking that those thoughts about any large mainstream media personality?
The closest
Not
one
at
is
all.
like Tucker Carlson, and I still put him in the basket with like Don Lemon and all those, just screen readers. But Tucker, at least once or twice a week, he'll have a Democrat on, and he'll give him some fastballs and stuff, but and some soft pitches and a little mix of stuff. But at least he brings people on. Like one person I do respect a lot is like Bill Maher. He is like an old school progressive, and he'll talk to Ben Shapiro, and he recently had
Yeah.
Kid Rock on his podcast, and it was like they
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't know. I believe they never met in person, or it's been a couple years. But you have like full on, guy who supports socialism, and then just like redneck from Michigan, and they just talk for 2 hours like normal people. They're just sharing a blunt, and same thing. That's why I think that long format's been taken over the last 5 years, because I think if people just saw that thumbnail of it, they would have thought it would have been like Alex Jones and Don Lemon talking. But then in reality, it's just two guys talking. It's like, yeah, we disagree on a lot of stuff, but it's like we said, most people are disenfranchised, so it's like, let's agree on the stuff we agree on, and then let's use that to start building the road instead of just throwing bricks at each other for 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped listening to Tucker. Not that I ever listened to him, but every now and then I'd flip the channel. This years ago, and he always, I don't know, I never thought of him as a sincere person. I always thought he was kind of a grifter. I don't know what he's up to. I haven't watched him for years, so I have no idea what he's talking about now. Maybe he's, become
No,
a little
I
bit
would definitely
better,
say he's
but
a grifter. He's just the most classy grifter of like the mainstream guys. Yeah, I would not trust him with $5. Yeah, I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched. I mean, I literally, I stopped watching all mainstream. If it's on a TV channel, I don't watch it. That's my criteria now. Like, I just don't bother watching it. I think, but like it's coming back to the conversation of decentralization. I think information is starting to become decentralized, or sources of information rather becoming decentralized, which I think is super important because it is really difficult at times for layman people to know what the truth of the matter is, right? It's hard to know. Like, okay, like whatever your opinion is about, the a vaccine or a disease, a pandemic or whatever it is, ivermectin. Yeah. I mean, choose your thing that's controversial.
Yeah, everyone's a doctor now.
Yeah, exactly. Choose your thing that's controversial, and it's difficult to know who to trust anymore. And so you may pick a personality that says, okay, you know what, whatever, whether he's right or wrong, at least I know that he's going to sincerely try to get to the truth. Now, he may not get there, but, the CDC sometimes has been wrong. Not sometimes. Then the government has been wrong about things as well, right? The food pyramid, right, is a government construction, which is complete horseshit, right? I mean, I think it's done nothing to, help Americans' health at all. We all just become fatter in the time since the food pyramid was introduced, and I don't think it's done anything at all. The bottom of the food pyramid, for example, is grains, right? We're all supposed to be eating grains all the time, and it's terrible for you. So they get it wrong, and then you start looking for alternative sources of information, and I think sincerity, like the sense of like this person is not just intelligent, but he's sincerely trying to get to the truth. That ends up being, I think, the criteria that most people gravitate towards, right? And so you're almost delegating all the research that goes into it. You're like, listen, I don't have time to like read 30 medical articles and figure out if XYZ medication is good for me or bad for me, but I do trust so and so personality online. Like, let's pick Huberman. Andrew Huberman is very big these days. I do trust his opinion. Let's see what he has to say. I don't have to agree with it, but at least I know he's not going to feed me bullshit, right? And so we're starting to see the rise of these completely independent media. I hesitate to use the word media personality because this is a different kind of thing. They're not traditional media, but they're independent platforms, or I guess you could even call them platforms, right? Where many ideas are discussed, and then some of these ideas are not mainstream. I mean, a great example is the whole controversy over like the trans surgery stuff, right?
Oh yeah, that's a hot one in Austin.
Where I think, I haven't dived into it, and I'm not, and I don't have any opinions that I want to share, at least on the channel, because I don't have any well-informed opinions. I've not done any kind of serious research on it. But what I do want to comment on is the amount of controversy that arises when people say, well, is it right to be doing these kind of things on kids, right? I mean, do we even have the science for that? And then that suddenly turns into a political hot potato. And if anyone points out that kids are not fully formed when they're young, and these transitions should not be occurring at a young age, suddenly you're anti-trans. There can be no middle ground, and that at least is the flavor of the debate in mainstream media. You're transphobic if you don't agree that you can transition at any age. You should give puberty blockers to people who are to young men and young boys and girls in order to aid the transition. So it's very explosive, and I don't think that mainstream media, frankly, is equipped to handle it. Right? I mean, all of these things are coming out, and we need a platform, we need a space where these conversations can be had with integrity and sincerity, and in long format, where like the details of the thing are really sort of like explored deeply. And mainstream media is not going to do it, right? No. And so I think we're going to see the rise of decentralized information dissemination. I think it's already started, but I think we're getting to an inflection point now where like all trust in traditional media is gone. And if you want to put a capstone on it, it's FTX being interviewed by Andrew Sorkin in a casual way, and being thrown softballs. It's like that's the nexus of decentralized money. And I mean, the FTX wasn't even decentralized money; it was a centralized exchange, right? So it's then you had all sorts of like these VCs. I mean, it was all you had like you had all these political contribution. It was literally the nexus of all that is wrong with the system, right? FTX was. It's just a big concentrated pile of like societal shit, all just sort of concentrated in one big, like tightly packed ball of crap.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I've harped on this too at the meetups. I think a big thing right now in crypto is how we kind of want our abs and pizza at the same time. People, so like let's just say, for lack of a better word, Bitcoin, let's just say for Bitcoin for now, sake of the argument, it's a tool, right? Well, a tool, depending, if you give an F1 car to like Lewis Hamilton or something, he's going to make $100 million doing it. You give it to me, I probably can't get it out of first gear, And I think a thing in crypto is we go, Bitcoin fixes this, that, and a third, and we don't look at any of the negatives. And I think that's the thing too. When we also talk about decentralizing everything, we think it's like, everyone's gonna have a fair shake of the pie, this, that, and a third. And back to my point earlier when you were talking about, like especially over COVID, it's a lot of the powers of authority were depending. You could tell what someone tweeted if they watch Fox News or if they watch CNN. And that's the thing too. It's like I joked, everyone after COVID is a doctor now because they can just they can Google something, find exactly what they want to prove their point. And then so I guess like I bring up this past week I've been chilling, just working, but the little just snippets I've seen on everyone's take on Sam and the whole FTX thing. You have the whole libertarian camp where it's like this is just market selection. Sam didn't commit a crime. The Sequoias of the world, just average investor. You should have done more of your homework. If you want to be in crypto, do crypto properly. You can have maybe 10% of your stack on an exchange. There's a reason cold storage, not your keys, not your coins, is a thing. And then you have some people who are saying we need to regulate all this to hell and back tomorrow. And I think that it goes back to the thing. You have like the Fox CNNs of the world, and then you have that gray middle, the Lex Friedmans, the Bill Maher's, the Joe Rogans, and it's like what to learn from this. It's like, okay, obviously a crime was committed, but even though a crime was committed, we don't want all these idiots in DC coming in to fix all of our problems before they give us time to fix them. So obviously, can we move forward and learn from this? Yeah. But, Mt. Gox was basically a decade ago, and this is kind of Mt. Gox to a T, just the multiple is like 10x. So, like, how do I word this? Obviously we decentralize everything, but it's also kind of like being free. I forget who said it, but someone said one time that most people rather be free than, or rather be controlled than free. So that's the thing too. Mm-hmm. It's like you want to decentralize everything. Well, if everyone becomes a decentralized idiot and another FTX happens, you have no safety net. So I think that's kind of at least one point I've been just stewing on, or just kind of like meditating on the last week. It's like, okay, if we want to decentralize everything and let's say 5-10 years another FTX happens, how do we rebuild from that? Because right now a lot of people are saying, hey, geniuses in DC, come fix our problem for us. And last 2 years we've seen how competent they are.
Yeah, I thought a little bit about this, and again, I'm no lawyer, I'm no legal expert, but I don't know, how would regulations have really fixed anything, right? I mean, this guy was just
Yeah.
committing fraud. He was not incorporated in the United States, so you could even argue that the U.S. government really has no jurisdiction over him. Uh, yeah, because he was not operating in the U.S., right?
It was Bahamas,
FTX
right?
U.S., the Bahamas,
Yeah.
and I don't know much about the Bahamas, but I think it's very telling that he's not been arrested while he's over there. He's probably greased some palms over there, no doubt. I mean, he's got a lot of money tied up in the islands over there. So it's not very surprising that, he's just roaming around free and he's probably not interested in setting foot in the United States. What I am surprised by is that, the Bahamian authorities, I don't know if they've been bribed. When I say bribe, I basically mean political contributions, which is all just legalized bribery. I don't know if they got money under the table or what happened, but they were hoping to become a crypto hub, and obviously this just blows all that out of the water. I think Dubai is another country that's also trying to be a crypto hub. I'm surprised that the authorities didn't arrest him because it completely demolished the reputation of Dubai as being a responsible uh, uh, space in crypto. I think a lot of people are probably going to start going to Dubai instead or something. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what law would have passed in the United States that would have prevented this. I mean, fraud is still illegal, last I checked, right? And what he was doing was using customer funds in a way that violated his terms of service. He was not supposed to just move his customers' money to some other uh, entity like Alameda, which is basically he was basically rehypothecating money, and that's not something that is allowable. Banks can do that, right? But I mean, because they're legally allowed to, but that's not something that the crypto folks are allowed to. And not only that, but it was against his own terms of service. Like his own terms of service, like prevented him from doing that. But like I said, he was trying to fill a hole, and then after a while, all it was a hole. So, a lot of people are talking about let's pass some regulations so this doesn't happen again. But my question was, what regulation are we talking about? Fraud is still illegal. My understanding is FTX US is solvent, and people who had money in FTX US will probably be able to get their money back. That's what I've heard. And that's probably because it was under US jurisdiction. And because of that, it ended up, probably not rehypothecating its money and being backed one by one. And by the way, I think FTX has a branch in Japan, and it's the same deal. Japan is very strict about these sort of things. And Japan is, the FTX in Japan, from what I understand, maybe I hope I'm not misquoting this, people in Japan are going to get their money back. So, it's if if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right?
Yeah, for real.
You end up working or putting your money on an exchange that is not regulated, and it's in some country like the Bahamas, which we'd have really no idea how much oversight they have over things. These sort of things are bound to happen. I just kind of wonder what's next for crypto, man. I mean, I have never. I think last time we talked, I'm like, well, this is peak bearishness, right? And just I think today or yesterday, J.P. Morgan, the Jamie Dimon came out and says, crypto is a complete sideshow. It's like owning pet rocks.
Yeah, I
just
saw
another
that. Yeah,
dig at
because
it.
Peter Schiff was on Tweetstorm about that because he's so insightful.
Peter said, I don't know, I didn't catch his tweets,
Oh,
but
well, I'm
he
sorry.
said
He was
that,
riding the
and of
coattails
course,
of. Sorry, he was riding the coattails of the Jamie Dimon pet
oh,
rock
Jamie
thing.
Dimon,
He was given
gotcha,
he
gotcha.
was given a very accurate list of how Bitcoin's a pet rock, and like 5 out of the 10 things were just wrong. They were just wrong. So he's so insightful. But yeah, Jamie Dimon too. He's a character.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that the people sort of equate, cryptocurrency with Bitcoin, and they're just completely, they're not the same thing, And again, like I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, I do believe that of the God knows how many thousands of coins there are going to be, like 0.1% are going to survive.
Oh
But
yeah.
that 0.1% are still like a few dozen coins that, I mean, at 10, 15, at least are going to have some utility and function in the next 10, 20 years. And so focusing on all the like freaking scams is very unhelpful because it loses sight of the fact that the original blockchain decentralized money was just a giant leap forward in the reinvention of money. And I just, I get a little frustrated when I hear these kind of narratives, because I'm like, do you guys understand, like you can't say crypto and Bitcoin and pretend that it's Bitcoin. These are not the same thing,
Yeah,
like
interchangeable. They're
there's
not. Yeah.
Bitcoin and yeah, they're not. I mean, Bitcoin is not the same as, I don't know, pick your meme coin, like
Doge, Sheep, yeah.
Elon Cumrocket. Elon Cumrocket was a meme coin for like 2 minutes or something last year. I think it did 100x or something, some bullshit before it exit scammed. That's a cryptocurrency too, and so people look at that sort of stuff and are like, well, yeah, all of crypto is a scam, but Bitcoin is its own sort of thing. This is the first decentralized money, and I'm not a maximalist, but I'm sympathetic, to like Bitcoin maximalists who say, listen, you guys are just like ruining it all. These are all power grabs, and they are. A lot of this stuff is power grabs. But in the midst of all of this chaos and greed and scams and everything, there are like sincerely hardworking project teams building real, shipping real code, like doing like very innovative things, in Ethereum and Cardano and Polkadot, um, off the top of my head, I think those ones are exciting. I think maybe Chainlink is doing some interesting things as well. I mean, there's interesting projects out there that are doing, really interesting things, and yet, people like Jamie Dimon will like, take a large brush and paint the whole thing as like just complete bullshit, right? And it's a little frustrating, but I think it's not unexpected in a bear market. This is what happens, people just, shit on everything.
Yeah, kick you while you're down. Yeah.
Yeah, they just sort of shit on everything, and then it's sort of just up to you to like recognize it. Well, this is what happens. This is bear markets, in bear markets, everyone starts parroting each other. Like, well, Jamie Dimon says it, right? And so someone, who follows Jamie Dimon or admires him, he might just repeat it without really diving deep and understanding the differences between crypto and Bitcoin. And then someone else repeats it. And before you know it, it has the appearance of consensus and truth. Whereas in reality, people are just, copying each other. I bet you, like when Jim Cramer came out and said, like, yeah, I think Jim Cramer came out and said, you should sell all your crypto. It's all going to zero. I bet you anything he, read something that Jamie Dimon had said and, just hopped on the bandwagon, right? So these sort of narratives sometimes take a life of their own. And I think in the bear market, it's a little difficult, unless you've seen them before, difficult to look at that and not be a little bit discouraged or feel a little bit fearful. Even I sometimes, fall into that trap, and then I'm like, remind myself, I'm like, listen, like this is a bear market. This is what bear markets feel like. They feel unsettling and they feel scary and everyone's shitting on it and piling on top. This is what they feel like. So we just got to wait it out. I don't know how much more time is going to take before things turn around.
I think we got a while.
I don't know, man.
About you. I think we got a while.
Yeah, the thing with bear markets is they always seem to last, or they have the appearance of lasting for a really long time, and then everyone gets peak bearish, and when everyone's peak bearish, that's when it really just starts to turn. And I don't know if that's going to happen. And I'm not making any predictions at all, but. I think it's definitely telling that, like every time you turn on like Bloomberg or the news or whatever, there's some anti-crypto article that's like, oh, we told you, like you and your pet rocks, like what did you expect was going to happen?
Yeah, Bitcoin's dead for the millionth time.
Yeah, it's died again, right?
Dude, it's like even in the 5 years I've been in the industry, I've probably seen over, I don't want to exaggerate too much. I would confidently say I've seen over like 100 articles like, China bans Bitcoin. It's like, well, yeah, you ban the possession of it, but obviously they have their own internal internet suppression, this, that, and a third. But it's like, there's still people in there with cold wallets and et cetera. But to your point, I don't know, what are we, about 3 weeks removed from like the peak, capitulation of FTX? Basically when it was happening, I was pretty busy. I was doing some stuff at ACL Live downtown. So like I was like 18-hour day, going to bed, 18-hour day, et cetera. And basically if it wasn't like an emergency, just kind of text some buddies, I'll get back to you later. But I had about six, eight buddies hit me up like, yo, what is FTX stuff? Are you broke? What is this? Like crypto dead? And the thing is, I had to like be like, hold on, I'm working. When I get back, I'll explain this. But I'm like, well, this was an exchange. So like, well, yeah, so Bitcoin got hacked. And like, I'm like, no, dude, we pull the brake. But that's the thing, man. And it's like, it's, you know, how do we learn from this? I think we first need to explain to everyone what happened, like backstep, break it apart, and then also be like, okay, so this is Bitcoin, this is crypto, this is exchanges, you know, like you said, here's the pro cons of each, you know, like you said, a lot of people, I even catch myself doing it, like sometimes interchanging, you know, Bitcoin with crypto. I try to get most of my talking points from like a wannabe Bitcoin maxi standpoint. But then, like, you know, we talk about this a lot. I think the more I get into crypto, the more I follow like the again, I just talk trash on, but I think Peter Schiff has some good points. You know, the Lynn Aldens, the Lawrence Lepers of the world, because once you start getting basic Bitcoin crypto, then you need to go back and be like, oh, what was 2008? It's like, oh, wait, when did we get off gold? It's like, wait, when did the U.S. government confiscate gold and then reprice it so they made more money, this, that, and the third? But it's but that's the thing too. I think it's really hard to move forward from this just because, again, it's a small sample size. In my personal circle, I had a good 6 or 8 buddies hit me up. They're like, dude, FTX got hacked. Like, how bad did Bitcoin get hacked? How much money did you lose? Like, and they're just assuming all this stuff. I'm like, man, if they're assuming this, what else are they assuming? That like you and I, we know, like we assume the opposite and we know it's right because it's right, but they're assuming XYZ just because, like we said, it's, you know, a little rumor turned into a wildfire really quick. And then, you know, I don't know, like the amount of people that think like, you know, Bitcoin is like just used for drugs, like the Silk Road effect, this, that, and a third. So it's, I think that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of carnage right now and a lot of dust settling. So like you said, we're entering a bear market or we're in a bear market. Now would be a really good time to like educate people. Okay, FTX is a lot like Mt. Gox, which is a lot like 2008, which is a lot like the dot-com bubble. This is why you need decentralized stuff. This is why not your keys, not your coins is a thing. But you know, it's just hard. Like I tried to, other night I was out with a friend and we were talking. I gave her a little like 5-minute Bitcoin TED talk, and about 3 minutes in, I could kind of see the gears going. I could see her like thinking about her taxes or something. So it's just hard. So it's, you know, well, it's
the
just
important questions.
No, it's just, you know, if you're not in it, and like we said, most people are, you know, she works more than me. Like she got some family stuff going on, so it's just people got a life, man. And it's like, you know, I assume you've kind of noticed this too. The crypto bug's weird. It bites people, and you either get it or you don't. And it's like most people are probably never going to get it. So the 10-15% of the population that really gets it, for lack of a better word, they're going to be like the spokesperson, like the representatives as we move forward. But I mean, yeah, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but like I said, I've just noticed myself in the last 2 or 3 weeks with my little sample size social circle. I think most people don't even know like what actually happened with FTX. Again, what is Bitcoin? What is crypto? So I think we just need to like pull the e-brake over the next year, hopefully try to just educate people on like why this happened, how to prevent it, and maybe the 24-25 bull market, we can correct it. But, you know, a boy can dream.
Yeah, you know, I do kind of relate with you about the whole crypto bug thing. And I'm thinking about one of the guys who came to our meetup, you know, Greg, and he came like a year ago or something, and he didn't know anything. Like he had no idea what Ethereum was even, or what Bitcoin, why should I buy Bitcoin? And he had like some super intelligent questions. And then, you know, I didn't end up like catching him in person for like maybe 4 or 5 months. And then he comes to the meetup, and now he's just like a walking encyclopedia of like, you know, this is how like Merkle trees work, and this is this is hash rate. He's like just he sounds like such an OG now, you know. And I was just so like taken by, he just did a deep dive, and he just like really read, and he totally understood. Like he got it right. So I'm curious, you know, you say you explained Bitcoin for like, you did your 5-minute TED talk, right? Do you have like, because this is the time to talk about like the nuts and bolts, right? Because if you wanted to explain Bitcoin to someone in 2021, they didn't want to talk about hash rates and like, this is, you know, how mining works and how the whole decentralized system works and why it's decentralized. They just wanted to know how much Bitcoin should they buy, and is it going to hit 100,000? That's all they're cared about. But this is the environment where if someone's asking you what they should buy, you should tell them you should buy a book, and read the book about Bitcoin. And until you're done doing some reading and understanding, you probably shouldn't buy any crypto at all. So I'm curious, when you are explaining crypto, you know, if you were to do it in say 5 minutes, so what is the structure? Or when I say crypto, I guess I'm talking about Bitcoin. When you're trying to explain Bitcoin and the whole idea of decentralized money, non-sovereign money, say to your friend who's a newbie, how do you approach that conversation exactly? What do you, how do you structure that entire argument?
I would say half the time it's more of why are you in it, and then I kind of give them the whole. It's not a coincidence that I believe 6 weeks exactly after Lehman Brothers, Bitcoin launched. It was still the beta version, but basically the blockchain we call Bitcoin now. And then there's the whole mid 90s or like early 90s, mid 90s cypherpunk movement, which like the last year I've gotten a lot more educated on because it leads to the thesis that Satoshi was definitely a team because like the Sana and Isaacson are a group that
are you thinking Satoshi is, you think Satoshi was a team of people?
Well, that's my point. It's like the longer I get in the space, and I've just like seen little interviews with like the Adam Backs of the world, and then like the Nick Szabos and stuff. A lot of these, and another gentleman's name, like Hal Finney's and stuff of the world.
Hal Finney.
Sorry, just lost my train of thought with that. Oh yeah, but just the amount of projects back then that were like 50% completed. But to get this stuff off the ground, you got to damn near be on an Albert Einstein level because it's trying to like imagine a new color. It's really freaking hard. And the fact that whoever Satoshi was, they could take what worked in every single project, somehow blend it all together. And same thing, he had the Gavin Andreessens and people come on and help him, get it from, beta mode to launch, etc. But the chance it was one person is really small. Again, there's some theories on who it could be. Some people think it's CIA, and that's a whole other rabbit hole in itself. But I basically tell them
that's an interesting rabbit hole. Do you think that there's some truth to that it could be a government agency that created Bitcoin?
That's
what are your
my problem with that's kind of like saying Barnes and Noble secretly trained Jeff Bezos. Like, why would you make your own venom? I could kind of get it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's almost kind of like a Frankenstein monster. You create it with intention A, but then it turns into B. But I try not to go down conspiracy rabbit holes because I feel like a lot of people get behind conspiracies because it gives them a false sense of intelligence or confidence. Because like, oh, I know something you don't. You guys are idiots. But yeah, I guess like my 5-minute TED talk, I try to they go, why are you in it? I tell them about, a lot of speculation that happened in 2001, how part of that influenced 2008, how again the rules for thee, not for me, influenced 2008. None of these bankers went to jail. I try to tell them like if I have cash in my wallet, I'm like, show me why this $5 bill is worth 5x this $1 bill, and some of them will just be like, I don't know, they'll make something up. Some of them, like I said, they'll quote gold. They're like, well, there's more gold on that $5 bill. Like, and then, I'm just trying to, and then, like a perfect example, I mean, just with COVID, like the PPP money, they can't track where like up to 20% of that PPP money went. They just threw it out from a helicopter, and I remember when COVID was happening, some of my friends were like, hey, what are you doing with all this stimulus money? I'm like, I'm sitting on this because I can't work right now. Half the country's on house arrest. And what I can do, I'm going to throw into crypto. They're like, why? I'm like, oh, this is going to cause a ton of inflation. They're like, whatever, Alex Jones. And I've told you guys, like the meetups in the last year, like the 12 main people in my circle, probably half of them have been like, okay, show me how to do this shit. Like, I don't want to go like, Navy SEAL crazy like you, but I just want to make sure I don't lose this shit, this, that, and a third. But I basically just tell them that, these idiots and these monkeys in New York and DC, they're not looking after us. I've showed buddies like just YouTube videos and articles about just how Social Security is probably going to blow up in our lifetime. Like my mom and my aunt are probably going to be the cutoff. There's a couple frontline documentaries and other documentaries on like states like Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey. Their pension plans are a sinking ship. So I told them, if you just work hard and sit on your ass and just hope that these idiots take care of you, I don't think we're going to get to Venezuela crazy Zimbabwe levels. But I basically just tell them, I'm like, the world, even though like we have social media and everyone's like more connected, this, that, and the third, we're still getting more decentralized in the fact that like we said, there's less powers of authority, or at least we're trying to get there. So it's like you have as much freedom in your speech, religion, where you work. It's like the fact that you have to take a certain type of money is kind of weird, how like everything else is kind of decentralized this or freedom of choice that, but you have to take this money. And I tell them, again, the market's going to decide in 20 years, but I have a lot of self-conviction just from personal belief and research that, Bitcoin's going to be a valuable money, commodity, store of value in 20 years. And I know that was over 5 minutes, but usually, like I said, by the time I get to like Lehman Brothers or like Social Security, I can usually tell they tune out. So.
Yeah, I've developed my own kind of spiel about that, and I start off by asking. So if I'm explaining Bitcoin to a complete newbie, I first start off the conversation by asking them if they understand what money is, right, and like how money even works, and trying to get them to a point of admitting or seeing that money is just a complex abstraction that humans have created, right? And we have different money systems or monetary systems, like I like to call them. Gold has been a very prominent monetary system. The dominant monetary system in the world today is the US dollar, and it is dominant because of US military might and the might of the US economy, which are not fixed in stone. Those things could change. They could literally change in a decade, if not sooner. And so if you agree that the current monetary system in the world is not a permanent state of affairs, because why would it be? There's no such thing as a money that has lasted thousands of years except for gold. Then the next question is, well, if there was an alternative monetary network that was superior, what would the properties of such a monetary system look like? And one of the things you could argue is that one of the central important things is that government does not control this alternative monetary network. That's sort of how I go about thinking about it, and then I say, well, then Bitcoin serves a lot of those sort of goals and purposes. But hey, there was a debate that I saw. There was this Greek economic minister. I totally forgot his name. He's this bald, tall guy. But he was a very famous economic minister who was very critical of government bailouts, or very, very, very critical rather of the banking bailouts in 2008. And he had a lot of public disagreements with his own Greek prime minister, and he was eventually fired and became somewhat internet famous for a while because he talked about money being mostly corrupt in governments. And he was having a debate with this Bitcoiner about Bitcoin is dead, or it's useless or whatever. And he says Bitcoin is fine and it's good and everything, but I think that it's not a viable thing because it's never going to replace fiat entirely. And I was listening to that, and the entire debate was centered on this guy saying Bitcoin is going to die, and this other guy's defending Bitcoin. But the fundamental premise was, he was saying that this is not true because Bitcoin can not possibly replace the US dollar, because when there are circumstances where we need to inflate the money, right? We need to print money. And he was citing COVID. He says if we hadn't printed money during COVID, or if we hadn't printed money during the financial crisis, the entire monetary system would have collapsed entirely, and that would have resulted in far more chaos and disruption than the alternative. And I don't know the truth of that one way or the other, but
yeah, that's like the hangover debate. Some people say the money printing is like when you keep drinking. Well, if you keep drinking, you're not going to get hungover, but you're just stalling the hangover and you're making it worse. That's one thing I do agree with Peter Schiff on. Like for example, not to get all meathead here, but like one thing, if you start getting into the gym or a sport consistently and seriously, coaches and good trainers will tell you, have set in deloads where you just kind of take a week off, or you just have super light days at like 20-30%, because if you just go for 8 or 10 weeks and you don't purposely plan in a deload, your body's going to force you to take one, and instead of being a week, it might be a month to where you're set behind. And then to anyone that's listening that works out or does a sport or lifts, a month, that is a huge amount of time where you're not making progress, you're regressing, and then it's going to take you a month after that just to get back to where you were. So from A to Z, it could be like a 3-month gap before you make progress again. And same thing too, you could argue we're still in regression right now, because like we started the conversation off, there's debate right now if we're even in a recession or if we're going into a recession. And then on top of that, there's the debate, are we going to go into a depression, and how bad could that get? Because, it's basically been 100 years on the dot since we've had a depression. So there's a handful of living people, who were even alive, let alone remember that. So, we only have storybooks or, history books to read on that.
Yeah.
But, no, I haven't seen that one with that or wait,
Former
not politician.
economic minister.
Yeah, the minister you were talking about. But yeah, that's just one thing I find funny too. Like we were talking about with just like powers of authority. I'll have some friends that go, "Oh man, not Lawrence Leopard, sorry. Like the Charlie Mungers of the world would be like, and the Jamie Dimons, Bitcoin's a pet rock. I'm like, yeah, but they've also missed some of the biggest tech IPOs in the last 20 years. That they literally don't know anything about tech, and they avoid it for that reason. They say stay in your realm of competency. So it's like that's like asking your plumber what they think about the oil change. They're out of their realm of competency.
Yeah, I mean, I think the market is going to decide, and to sort of bring the conversation full circle, we were talking about media. The market, I think, has already decided, like Joe Rogan is, say, more popular than CNN. I mean, who would have imagined, just 7, 8 years ago? I watched Joe Rogan for over 10 years now. I mean, he's been around for a while. And I've listened to him since he was not very famous at all. I've listened to him since he used to do the Fleshlight commercials. He was basically sponsored by Fleshlight. If you don't know what that is, you should just Google that.
He did those? I did not know that. I feel like I should.
Yeah, that's when he was super early and he was not that big at all. And
what year was this?
It was. Oh, I'm talking about 2012, 2013.
Okay, yeah, I guess yeah. Wow, I did not even know he did that. That's
in
funny.
the very beginning. I mean, I remember this clearly because I saw the commercial, but one of his guests in the very beginning, in the early years, was Sam Harris. And Sam Harris actually told Joe, listen, when I'm on, I would really appreciate it if you don't switch to a commercial about fleshlights. Because it's sort of not my brand. It's not really people are not going to take me seriously.
Intellectual stick.
Yeah.
Up, yeah.
So I was I've been following him that early on, and I would have never imagined that he would ultimately end up being someone that was more trusted and probably more popular than something like CNN or the BBC or whatever. Right? It's just mind blowing. And in the same way that most Americans of an earlier generation trusted the U.S. government on a variety of things, like, the U.S. government says that I should, eat this way, and so I better do that. I better follow the food pyramid. The food, the U.S. government is saying that, this is how I should say maybe educate my kids. They're saying this about vaccines, or they're saying this about whatever. There was a time where most people would just agree with that and go along with it, and that's not happening. And one of perhaps the last dominoes to fall is the government's control of money. And this is sort of where crypto comes in. Hey, I do have a question for you though. What are your thoughts about Twitter and Twitter's potential adoption of cryptocurrency, throughout the world? Did you have any thoughts on whether or not it's good for crypto or bad for crypto?
I don't know. I guess the libertarian to me, the first thing I'm going to go to is the market will decide. For example, the market decides that Twitter is valuable, has some flaws, just like everything else. But the fact that if you're into fixing cars, you can follow the Gas Monkey guy, and he could just tweet, "Oh, this is the best way to do your brake fluid or your coolant, this, that, and the third." With that said, Facebook a couple years ago tried to do, what are they calling it? They were calling it Zelly or Zell or Zebra, the token. They were
Libra.
Libra, there we go,
Libra.
Sorry. And, they were going to have it backed by a basket of, global currencies. And even if you didn't like it, you could be like, okay, they thought this out a little bit. There's, 2 brain cells actually went into this, With that said, I think back to one of my original points, a lot of people in crypto are still trying to do crypto with a base position from the legacy financial system. So I could still see where Twitter, I know Jack Dorsey is I know he's no longer really involved with Twitter, but I know he's a big voice for voice for Bitcoin and the blue chip companies in crypto, and he sees the importance of free speech. He sees the importance of just free value and people deciding to them what's valuable and what should be a currency, fiat, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I could easily see, even though Musk is in charge now, I could still see Twitter bastardizing it, and not saying they would blow up like FTX, but it could basically just become almost like if you play a video game, you have Xbox, you have your Xbox tokens. I could see where it basically becomes that, you just kind of have a currency inside of ecosystem, and it's valuable in that ecosystem, but it could get gerrymandered, and like I said, it just repeats the legacy financial stuff. Not saying that Bitcoin can be used for everything, but it's the fact that like literally with $500 in a weekend with a solderer, you can make a Raspberry Pi Lightning node, and basically as long as you know the technical know-hows, you have instant access, can make a Lightning channel, and you are now, can be a validator, and you can participate in the network with zero, basically zero entry or barrier to entry. And it's just the same thing. I want to be like one of those guys, like the Corey Klepsons of the world, where it's like, oh yeah, screw Twitter, that's going to blow up in their face in 2 days. But I just think even though we're still in the fallout of FTX, any Wall Street, Silicon Valley stuff that's like, oh, this is how you do crypto and watch us, I'm like, yeah, I'm reserved. So it's, but I mean, again, if they did it and helped, adoption in the community, but it's just, we're 3 weeks removed from FTX still. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm pessimistic, but definitely not optimistic.
I've given it a little bit of thought, not a ton of thought, but I think Elon taking over Twitter represents a real opportunity for crypto. And I don't know if he's going to incorporate Dogecoin. I mean, he probably will. But the opportunity is that if you, for example, have one of the things that Twitter is known for is that, one of the value adds of Twitter is that it is a fully formed network already, right? So people are connected to each other. You can verify yourself. So you could, for example, set up a shop where you're selling a product, in some other country, and you set your shop up on Twitter. You put pictures up of your wares. You have customers who buy things engage with you as well. In the comment section, and you accept payments via crypto. Now, if you are, for example, a small village in Botswana, for example, right? Well, why would you use Twitter and accept crypto? Well, because one of the most famous men in the world owns this thing. And I think, even though we talked about centralization, decentralization, the fact that Elon Musk is the one who owns it is significant, right? If, say, Jamie Dimon owned it or Bank of America owned it, I think the amount of trust that some poor farmer in, the middle of nowhere Africa would have for settlement opportunities on Twitter would not be as exciting. But they were like, well, this Elon Musk guy is trying to, save the world, and it's on his platform, and he's very popular in many places. I think he gets a lot of hate in America, but I think in a lot of places, very, very much people look up to him. He involves himself in controversies that only really Americans care about, right? I mean, people around the world don't care about whether he's going to vote Republican or Democrat. If you're in Africa, if you're in Asia, you don't give a crap about the Republican Democrat thing. You're not involved in the woke bullshit, so most of the world actually has a pretty good opinion of him. And so, people, I think the Chinese people in general have a pretty good opinion of him. I think they admire him very much, especially the Indians do. And if they can, they have a platform that he owns, just like he owns SpaceX and it's sending people to the moon, just like he owns Tesla and it's, creating electric cars and, attempting to decrease carbon emissions. In the same way, they're like, well, he owns this other great company that's trying to do great things in the world. So I'm going to allow my marketplace to be on Twitter. So I'm going to send, hand-woven baskets, and ship them out across the world. And I will accept a settlement payment over Twitter because it's owned by this great man called Elon Musk, and it's his company, and he seems like he knows what he's doing because he is such a successful person. Now, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin that is settled on Twitter. It could be, I'm sure Doge will be there somewhere, but you're not, if you're some poor farmer, you're not going to accept Doge, right? And you might not even accept Bitcoin, but you probably would accept USDC. You probably would accept a stable coin that's denominated in US dollars or some other stable coin that's denominated by a basket of currencies, or a stable coin that's just a lot more stable than your local currency. Mm-hmm. And, as long as, ecosystems start, growing around Twitter as a payment system, you may not even need a fiat off-ramp, right? You could just, get payments for your, hand-woven baskets, that you shipped off to America. They go to your Twitter account, which may have a payment portal, and then you take that entire phone and you go to your local fish market and you buy some fish with that USDC that you just got. Because the fishmonger, the guy who's selling you fish, is also on Twitter and also accepts that payment network. So, like money at the end of the day is all about, or, it's a network effect. And then that's all about how many people adopt it. And that's all about trusting the network. So what Elon brings to the table in, perhaps introducing a global monitor or an opportunity for a global monetary network is the gravitas that he brings as a very successful entrepreneur. People would probably trust him more than, say, if I owned Twitter, right? Or if Jack Dorsey owned Twitter, or whoever the guy, Indian guy was who was running it for like 3 weeks, before he got fired, was running Twitter, right? I mean, Elon has this sort of this almost magic to him, right? That he could sort of just sell anything and be successful. I mean, he hasn't literally failed at a single company that he started, right? Like what does Peter Thiel say? Never bet against Elon. Like he said that multiple times. Like he's going to do something. You probably shouldn't bet against him. So I mean, this is just an interesting thought experiment. Yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment. I don't know if it'll actually pan out, but I do think that stable coins, for whatever their downsides are, and they're definitely downsides because they represent an opportunity for centralization again. So you could have the centralization wolf in sheep's clothing in stable coins. I think that is true. At the same time, however, a lot of people in the world will very happily accept, U.S. dollars. And if they can trust that the U.S. dollars that's coming to them on the phone, as in the form of a stable coin, is real dollars, if they can, form that belief, then it doesn't matter where those stable coins live. They could live on Twitter, they could live on some other app, but Twitter could definitely kickstart that process. And the reason that's exciting is that it essentially is a way to financialize the or bank the unbanked, financialize the unfinancialized in countries where banking services don't exist. It could just completely leapfrog banking altogether in much the same way that you don't need internet cable wires anymore to get internet to the furthest reaches of the world. You basically just need a cell phone connection now in order to be able to provide internet to people, right? So it just leapfrogged over the infrastructure, and in a similar way, this has a potential of leapfrogging over like banking services as well. So I'm very interested to see like where what the money element, payment element of this is going to be. Unfortunately, Elon is not best friends with a lot of the financial regulators in Washington.
Yeah, he hates the SEC. He's been very vocal about that.
Not just I don't think he likes anybody over there, and they don't like him much either, right? And so if he says tomorrow that, listen, we're going to do payments on Twitter, I think that's going to be a brawl. That's going to be an ugly fight. But it may be a fight that he's willing to do, right? And I think a lot of people will start championing that as well. Like, yeah, if you open this up, then there's multiple opportunities for financializing the unfinancialized. I mean, at the end of the day, remember, like, Elon did come from Africa, right? He's an African at the end of the day. So it's not like
Africa, right?
South Africa, yeah, which is Africa, right? It's in the name. So it's not like he's not aware of the kind of problems that arise from not having financial services in very poor regions of the world. He's fully aware of that problem. And let's not forget, he was also one of the guys who co-founded PayPal, which is also a payments network, right? So he may be coming full circle with Twitter. And I kind of wonder if this is one of the reasons he bought it. It's like, oh, this is a network effect thing that already has sort of a community around it, and if I can like attach a payment solution or settlement layer to it, then that makes it even better. And if he can change Twitter's reputation as a platform where free speech is allowed, and you can there's no spamming and there's no bots, and because he's trying to clean it up, right, and it's not biased and all that. I mean, then the sort of reputational trust that Twitter has in the world goes up a little bit, and that's very important if you're also trying to do a financial monetary network on top of that, right? So I think the possibilities there. I don't know if he's even interested. I mean, this is all a thought experiment. This is just me like bringing this all out of my ass. I have no evidence of any of this, but I think there's definitely opportunity there. Whether that gets realized or not would be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, Elon Musk is definitely an eight ball. It's like people ask me what I think about him. I'm like, he's interesting. In a word, it's because you see some interviews with him and he looks like the next walking Da Vinci, and then you see some interviews or his tweets and he's just talking about Doge, and it's he keeps people on their toes because the most dangerous person in the world is someone that's unpredictable for better or worse. But I guess to kind of like step back and like collect some tools, kind of I guess like go full 360 on our conversation. You talked about we were talking about earlier, like my TED talk. I kind of try to give people, and you just said something. And we also talked about like what is truth, what is science truth, what is this, that, and the third truth. One thing I've been working on the last 6 or 9 months, like at least mentally, with where I could see Bitcoin in 10, 20 years. I've said this like religiously. I don't think Satoshi. I think maybe short-sightedly, he was like, this is going to be cash. But again, the biggest thing after '08 wasn't cash. We damn near printed $1 trillion. It was the fact that the trust, the social network, the confidence of the American taxpayer dropped, because it's like, I've been playing this game fair my whole life. I've been working hard, saving money. You're just going to make all this new money that required no energy to make. Now everything's more expensive for me. All this previous energy I stored is now less valuable. So I think the original thing was just, it was a gold 2.0. It was just a central rock of value that it's like, math and code. So what you said, I could see totally in 10 or 20 years where, for example, now with exchanges, most of them, they don't even have a cash balance. If you sell, say you have some Tezos and Ethereum and you sell it, you'll get Satoshis in your balance for that reason, or, if they have their own stable coin, this, that, and a third. But I could see, like you said, in 10, 20 years where, like, say there's a Twitter ecosystem, maybe there's a Tesla ecosystem, and with the other countries, it's like, even now with currency conversion, that's a whole headache in itself, where it's like people are like, oh, I don't know what the 5 Tesla tokens to 10 Twitter tokens converts as. Well, if each of those converts right back to Bitcoin and Satoshis, then there's your whole utility use case, because like you said, branding and ecosystems that should are just like we were saying earlier, like there's a reason people are attracted to the Lex Fridmans, the Joe Rogans. They have their own little community and their own little synergy with them. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's like, God forbid, Lex Fridman and Joe Rogan get their own currency, or you get what I'm saying, or they get their own merchandise. You get what I'm saying? And people want to trade that, and they don't have any more faith in their local currency. Well, there's a use case utility for Bitcoin, and then like we were saying earlier, I know we went way off course originally from the whole FTX Sam thing, but I think that's what we were just saying. It's like I'm pretty sure it's obvious how to learn from FTX and what went wrong. Obviously, we'll see in the coming 9 months to even a year how, if he gets jail time, if he's a 1%er that skates free. But I think it shows that it's like, Bitcoin's a tool, and the truth in it and its value is like what the community and what the ecosystem make it. And same thing too, with Elon getting Twitter, unfortunately Russia, Ukraine going right now, the China lockdowns, North Korea. It's, there's a lot of 8-ball footballs that are ready to get kicked at any moment now. So I think the biggest thing, like you said, is just with the dust settling and the bear market looking like it's still going to be another 12, 18 months, I think just like educating people on where we're at and where we could go is, I want to say it's a priority, but I think that's like the most important thing we can do right now. So
yeah, exactly right, man. I totally agree, dude. As always, man, this has always been a great conversation. Always enjoy like talking decentralized stuff with you.
Yeah, no, it's rabbit holes. It's like, I feel like we go for 5 more hours, but no, man, the next 6 to 12 months will be interesting, man. But I think we'll be good, and it's just everything's calming down. Like now, like we said, I'm enjoying it. I still think we got a little more pain to go before we hit like bare floor, but I'm looking forward to it. It's good. It's gonna suck for everyone collectively, but like I said, we got the group and we'll be good. So it's just keep it all day by day, and I think 5-10 years out from now, everything's gonna solve itself. Just gotta stay calm and not blow up like FTX. So.
Well, amen to that, man. All right, well, let's pick this up again next week. Hopefully there will not be another giant scandal by the time we're talking again. Hopefully things are just calm. We have a calm Christmas. It was a very awkward Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, I know you know this too. Like I tell my friends, I guess like final thing to wrap on. They're like, "What's the hardest part in crypto?" I'm like, "It's like dog years. A week in crypto feels like 2 months in real time, because like much crap can happen in a week. It's insane." But
it really is.
I think we find, it's end of the year. I think everyone and their dog's tired, so I think it's going to be calm, but knock on wood. So, but we'll see, man.
Exactly right. All right, man. Have a good rest of the week, dude. Always great talking to you as always.
All right, likewise, Atev. Talk to you later, brother.
All right, dude.